He's just an average bot with an average life. He works from 9 to 5. Hey, hell, he pays the price. All he wants to be is left alone in his average home. But why does he always feel like he's in the Twilight Zone? Is it a Decepticon spy? A hidden camera? Teletran 1 blinking funny again? Maybe it's just being paranoid, but when your entire personality is built around expecting danger at every turn, privacy becomes a myth, and peace of mind is non-existent. Sounds like a strange way to live for an Autobot. Unless you're this guy, constantly thinking, I always feel like somebody's watching me. Back in the 80s, there was this movie called The Cannonball Run, an over-the-top action comedy about a completely illegal coast-to-coast road race, featuring a cast of familiar stars at the time like Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, Roger Moore, Farrah Fawcett, Jackie Chan, Sammy Davis Jr., and Dean Martin. I was 6 when I saw it, so honestly, most of the plot sailed right over my head, but there's one thing that never left my brain and still pops up every single time that movie gets mentioned. Those two women. Minor characters, sure, Adrienne Barbeau and Tara Buckman, names that, to be honest, I had to Google for this video. And yeah, the reason I remember them is probably pretty obvious. But it wasn't just the looks or those aggressively shiny and revealing spandex jumpsuits. It was the car. Because in the 80s, if we are talking top-tier, poster-on-the-wall, futuristic or otherworldly sports car, everything came back to the Lamborghini Countach. Low, flat, and sharp enough to look dangerous even while parked. One glance and you didn't need to know a thing about cars to understand that this was coolness on a whole different level. Given just how hard the Lamborghini Countach dominated the cool car landscape, I honestly don't think it surprised anybody when it showed up right out of the gate in the very first wave of Autobots back in 1984. And Hasbro didn't just dip a toe in, they double parked, not once, but twice in the form of the Lambros, Sideswipe, and Sunstreaker, two instant favorites of mine. And really, it was only a matter of time before the Lamborghini came back for another lap. By the second wave in 1985, that same Countach body returned yet again. This time as a straight-up repaint and redeco of Sideswipe, dialed up with flashing lights and fire rescue markings. Enter Red Alert. And honestly, I was stoked. I really loved the Lambo mold, and that Fire Chief look felt like it leveled things up in the same way that Prowl's police deco elevated Blue Streak. Bottom line, I was genuinely excited to see Red Alert added to the Autobot ranks, even if, unfortunately, things would turn out to go a bit downhill from the initial burst of excitement. See, a big reason I think the Transformers were a hit from the start is that writers like Bob Budiansky actually cared enough to go beyond the whole robots in disguise gimmick and give us real characters. Those tech specs may have been short and sweet, but they were packed with personality, enough to make these guys feel more like just walking piles of nuts and bolts. Sure, you had your clear-cut heroes and villains, but a lot of them lived in that big gray area in between. They had quirks, flaws, motivations, stuff that felt surprisingly human, and, well, not always flattering. Which brings us to Red Alert, a character whose entire personality can be pretty much boiled down to one word: paranoia. Red Alert is the Autobot who never really learned how to relax. And that's not a bug. That's the entire job description. As the Autobot's security director, he's basically a rolling, talking early warning system, built to notice problems long before anyone else even suspects something's wrong. His sensors are absurdly sensitive. He can spot tiny objects from ridiculous distances, pick up faint chemical traces in the air, and hear disturbances from miles away. If something feels even slightly off, Red Alert isn't just concerned, he's already connecting the dots and preparing for the worst. The downside is that all that information hits him all at once, all the time. There's no real downtime for Red Alert, just different shades of alertness. The result is a guy who's jumpy, anxious, and absurdly convinced disaster is always just around the corner. Sure, he's set off more than his fair share of false alarms, and yeah, most Autobots probably find him exhausting to be around, but here's the thing. They're still alive, largely because of him. When danger actually does show up, Red Alert almost always clocked it first. When alarms go off, he's already moving towards the problem, not away from it. In the end, Red Alert isn't paranoid because something's wrong with him. He's paranoid because someone has to be. He may see danger where there isn't any, but the real catastrophes he prevents makes all that nervous energy worth it. And you know what? Yeah, I get it. On paper, it all sounds noble and necessary. In a war, you need someone posted on that proverbial wall, eyes wide open, never blinking. Totally fair. But Red Alert's very human, nervous, jumpy personality just never clicked with me. Even as a kid, I was a pretty chill dude, and his constant edge of a breakdown energy just didn't vibe with me at all. Honestly, I was expecting someone closer to Sideswipe. Cool, confident, effortlessly charismatic. I mean, Prowl isn't exactly the life of the party either, but his cold, logical, hyper-strategic mindset still felt cool in its own way. Red Alert, by comparison, just came off as wound a little too tight for my taste. And then there was his appearance. When it came to the second wave of Transformers, especially in the cartoon, it always felt like the artists made a conscious effort to visually separate these newer characters from the ones that came before them. While the first batch had a more streamlined, almost organic look to them, by contrast, the second wave leaned much harder, sometimes a little too hard, into matching the actual toys. And let's be honest, those toys weren't always the best blueprint when it came to body proportions. So, even though Sideswipe and Red Alert shared the exact same toy mold, you'd never guess it just by looking at their cartoon models. Sideswipe came off looking polished and sleek, like everything was exactly where it should be. Red Alert, on the other hand, looked square, clunky, a little stiff around the edges. Same car, same bones, but visually one screamed cool while the other felt bland and basic. I don't know. To me, Red Alert just felt like the lesser Lambro. Anyway, like most of his fellow 85ers, when it came to the cartoons, Red Alert just sort of showed up. No origin story, no dramatic rollout. One moment he didn't exist, and the next, he's inside Autobot headquarters, sirens blaring, putting out Dinobot-caused fires alongside his fellow fire buddy Inferno. And not long after that, wrangling up a gang of time-displaced horse rustlers like it's perfectly normal Autobot business. After his debut, Red Alert pretty much settled into a regular rotation on the show, most often paired with Inferno, who, aside from the whole fighting fires thing, really couldn't be any more different. Red Alert's constant caution and hair-triggered paranoia slammed headfirst into Inferno's loose, loud, and gung-ho attitude, turning the two into a kind of an accidental odd couple, one's always pumping the brakes, and the other's flooring it without looking. That tension worked for a while, until it didn't, and it eventually boiled over in Auto-Berserk, where that personality clash finally comes to a head, very much to Red Alert's detriment. In the episode, Red Alert is injured when Rumble fires a rocket into the Autobot bunker while Red is operating the latest must-have superweapon, the Negavator. The blast doesn't nearly kill him, but it does wreck his control console, scramble his logic circuits, and dials up his paranoia right up to 11. From that moment on, Red Alert becomes convinced that everyone, especially Inferno, whom he blames for leaving him alone in the bunker to go fight, has betrayed him, and that the Autobots are quietly looking for a reason to get rid of him. When Optimus Prime suggests repairing Red's logic circuits, he bolts, emotionally unraveling and wide open for manipulation. Enter Starscream, the Silver Snake himself, who plays the sympathetic ear and bonds with Red over shared feelings of betrayal and convinces him that they should steal the Negavator together. Unsurprisingly, the plan falls apart, and ironically, it's a blast from Starscream's null rays that ends up stabilizing Red Alert's damaged circuits, snapping him back to clarity just in time to sabotage the Negavator and save the Autobots. The episode closes on its emotional core. Inferno, racked with guilt over abandoning Red earlier, charges back into the burning base to rescue him as Red is injured from the Negavator's explosion. He carries Red Alert out of the flames, proving that despite all the clashes and shouting, he never stopped caring. Red apologizes and the odd couple partnership between Red Alert and Inferno comes full circle. bruised, tested, but ultimately reaffirmed. Aww. And honestly, that little emotional payoff was a welcome break because pretty much everything else about Red Alert in animation leaned hard into his anxiety. Case in point, voice actor Michael Caine has gone on record saying he based Red Alert's performance on Richard Nixon, a man so famously paranoid he literally recorded himself in secret. Once you know that, Red Alert's frantic delivery suddenly makes way more sense. Red Alert also popped up in one of the original Generation 1 public service announcements. One of 5 that never actually saw the light of day in the 80s, but eventually surfaced years later as bonus material on DVD releases. In it, Red Alert nearly runs down a couple of kids on bikes and scolds them for riding at night without reflectors. Although, he himself is driving at night with no headlights on, so, mixed messaging. And speaking of things that never saw the light of day, early storyboards for the Transformers 1986 movie actually depict Red Alert dying, being shot in the back by the Constructicons after helping Ultra Magnus, Trax, and Sideswipe attack Devastator. His body was even slated to appear later during the final Optimus vs. Megatron showdown. Thankfully, all of that was cut before release, so despite everything, Red Alert lives. Just like this channel, which I hope will live on as part of your regular YouTube rotation. Because honestly, the more you watch, the more it helps me out. A lot. When it comes to surviving the YouTube algorithm, watch time is everything. So when you're done with this one, maybe jump into another story, and then another, and yeah, you get the idea. Either way, thank you. Thank you so much for the continued support. It is genuinely and truly appreciated. Now, as far as the comics are concerned, Red Alert really doesn't amount to much, at least at first. In the original Marvel Transformers run, he's basically a non-entity, flat out absent, and that's wild because he's pretty much the only 85 Autobot car left out in the cold. I mean, even Skids, the poster bot for Most Ignored, still got his own featured stretch in the series involving a girl and a car wash. Another story for another time. But Red Alert? Nothing. Which ironically made him perfect for the Transformers UK comics, since the UK team had the unenviable task of weaving new stories around the US continuity. While publishing weekly, they mostly relied on characters the main series wasn't using, and Red Alert was wide open. He makes his UK debut in a pretty impressive way, taking down Brawn, who at the time was in the middle of a full-on car-smashing berserker rage, ironically thanks to his own accidentally scrambled brain. Red Alert drops him with a single punch, allowing Ratchet to finish the job with a neuro-tranquilizer. From there, Red Alert becomes a recurring presence in the UK future timeline set in 2009, teaming up with Cup and RC, and later joining Rodimus Prime's time-traveling crew during the Time Wars. He even manages to survive encounters with Galvatron, which already puts him ahead of the curve. What he doesn't survive, though, is the Transformers Generation 2 era, where Red Alert joins Grimlock's unauthorized raid on the Decepticon J-Axis' ship, Twilight, a mission that goes sideways fast and ends with Red Alert being destroyed. But if you ask me, that's not where Red Alert's story really finds its footing. For that, we go to his adventures in the later IDW comics. In the IDW era, Red Alert finally gets that deep dive into his character that it always needed. And it's a rough one. He's assigned as head of security aboard Rodimus' starship, the Lost Light, which is about the worst possible job for someone whose default setting is to expect the worst. Life on the ship only cranks his paranoia higher. The constant stress, the unknowns of deep space exploration, spark eaters, and even dumb stuff like Swerve's pranks push him further over the edge. In between his work shifts, Red Alert spends a lot of time in therapy with the ship's chief psyops specialist, Rung, trying and mostly failing to keep his anxiety in check. Things take a turn for the worst when Red Alert discovers the ultra-powerful and dangerous Decepticon Overlord secretly hidden and immobilized aboard the Lost Light, confirming his worst fears that something truly horrifying has been lurking under everyone's noses. Not long after, Red Alert vanishes, only to be found decapitated in the ship's oil reservoir. It's later revealed that the act was self-inflicted during a complete mental collapse, and he's immediately placed in cold storage. After recovering, Red Alert wisely chooses not to return to the Lost Light and focuses on trying to piece himself back together. That's when the final ugly truth comes out. Long before the war, Red Alert had been a sleeper agent for Sentinel Prime, subjected, along with other informants, to an early form of shadow play reconditioning meant to turn them into a covert militia. In the present day, Sentinel reactivates that programming. But this time, Red Alert fights back. Using the mental safeguards he built with Rung, he breaks free of Sentinel's control and helps bring him down. And for once, Red Alert's story doesn't end in paranoia or tragedy, but in clarity, and finally, his own bot. And speaking of finally being his own bot, while nowhere near as expansive or layered as his IDW arc, it's worth jumping ahead to Transformers War for Cybertron, the trilogy, where Red Alert does manage to get a little time in the spotlight. He's not a major player by any stretch, but at the very least, he's featured beyond the shadow of his other Lambro brothers. Here, Red Alert is reimagined in a very different but strangely fitting way. He's no longer fire security, he's a medic, trying to save lives in a war that's already well past the point of saving anyone. During the siege of Cybertron, Red Alert helps evacuate Autobots as the Ark launches, and pays for it. He's shot, falls from the ship, and is presumed dead as Optimus and the Ark vanish through the space bridge. Except, he doesn't die. Yet. Red Alert survives on Cybertron and eventually links up with Elita 1 and her small, desperate Autobot resistance movement. When they launch a final mission against the Decepticons, Red Alert waits outside the arena as Elita 1 plants explosives, only for Shockwave's forces to ambush them using cloaking tech. Captured and marched towards the arena, the team makes a break for it when Chromia attacks, but they're too late. The explosives detonate, killing Red Alert and the rest of the Resistance. It's a much leaner, harsher take on the character. No long recovery, no redemption arc, just a medic who stayed behind to help and paid the price for it. At this point, I want to make a quick detour and talk about a couple of characters who have absolutely nothing to do with our extremely paranoid, always on the edge Red Alert, except for one small detail: they share the same name. First up is the version that a lot of younger fans, I think, consider to be the definitive Red Alert, the one from the Transformers Unicron trilogy. Once a frontline warrior, this version of Red Alert is forced to step away from the fight when a battle gone wrong permanently costs him his hand, forcing a career shift into, again, a medic, quieter, more cautious, and far more focused on keeping his teammates alive than chasing glory. Not a coward. If anything, he's the guy who will walk straight into danger when somebody needs help. In the first series, Transformers Armada, he's an old war buddy of Optimus Prime, known for winning through planning, not brute force. He comes to Earth with Optimus, adopts an ambulance mode, partners with the Minicon Long Arm, and spends most of the war recovering injured Autobots, protecting humans, and questioning whether the Minicons should even be used as weapons. And by the last series, Transformers Cybertron, set 20 years later, Red Alert is a battle-hardened veteran, survivor of yet another near-fatal injury, and fighting through the final battles against Galvatron as part of the Cybertron defense team. No paranoia with this Red Alert, just a war-scarred medic holding the Autobots together, one repair at a time. The next Red Alert from the Transformers animated series is about as far from the G1 namesake as you can get. This Red Alert isn't a paranoid security officer. She's, once again, a brilliant Autobot medic with absolutely zero bedside manner. Blunt, gruff, and painfully honest, but also one of the most skilled surgeons Cybertron has ever produced. After losing her arm to a Decepticon booby trap, seriously, what is it with Red Alert losing limbs? She replaces it with a transfer interlink, allowing her to scan patients and generate hard light surgical tools on the fly. Behind the scenes, she was originally planned to be part of the animated's core Autobot cast, but was ultimately swapped out in favor of an older, grumpier Ratchet. The end result is that she only gets a cameo appearance as part of an Autobot unit defending a space bridge from Decepticon forces. Unfortunately, the team is widely outmatched, and Red Alert meets an undignified end when she's swallowed by the Decepticon Spitor and promptly spat out back as a living explosive projectile. Not exactly a flattering send-off, but hey, at least she didn't die. I think. Just kidding. She's seen cheering along with all the other Autobots in the last episode of the show. And with that extremely non-G1 detour out of the way, it's probably time to steer things back where they started, because for all the wild reinterpretations, cameos, and limb losses over the years, this video is still about the original paranoid fire chief. So let's jump back to Red Alert as we first knew him, and take a look at how the classic G1 version has been revisited, retooled, and re-released in plastic form over the years. What's funny is that this mold originally showed up in Japan's Diaclone line as a police car. That part didn't make the jump overseas though. Once Hasbro got a hold of it, they figured Prowl already had the whole police thing locked down. So instead of doubling up, they pivoted hard. Police lights out, Fire Chief lights in. Problem solved. Even funnier though is that the police deco would eventually circle back to Red Alert decades later in what I'd consider to be his first proper modern update in Takara's Binaltech line, where he was released simply as Alert. This version was curiously a repaint of the Silver Streak mold, now a Subaru WRX STI Japanese police car, which logically feels like it should have been Prowl, except Prowl had already been released as a completely different mold, an Acura RSX, whose robot mode honestly looked more like Red Alert. So yeah, somewhere along the line, plans clearly got shuffled. The Acura, with that car hood folded straight down in robot mode that absolutely screams Red Alert, ended up being Prowl, while Red Alert himself walked away as a police deco Subaru that, by all logic, should have gone to the Autobot military strategist. Did you catch all of that? And just to make things even more delightfully strange, this version of Red Alert also came packed with a PVC human figure named Ai Karuma, a policewoman based on a character from the Transformers, Robots in Disguise. And thankfully, Alert did not draw power from her kisses. I mean, who would even think of such a crazy... Oh, alright. Never mind. Anyway, after all that confusion, things get pretty straightforward. We get Henkei Transformers Alert in 2009, followed closely by the US Transformers Generation version in 2010. Both solid, modern updates to the original toy, now having him transform into a car that is not a Lamborghini Gallardo. Then came Transformers Masterpiece Red Alert in 2012, a purchase that basically marked the moment that I accepted I was officially all in on Masterpiece Transformers. And honestly, this figure still holds up really well. It's clean, accurate, and even comes with those head sparks that went off when Red Alert went crazy in Auto-Berserk. That said, a few third-party companies couldn't resist taking their own shots at an MP-scaled Red Alert. Bad Cube gave us a more angular, toon-style take with Recon, while Fantastic Model has their Firefighter version slated for release at some point next year. And finally, we got a plastic nod to Red Alert's ill-fated Transformers War for Cybertron Trilogy incarnation, a sleek Cybertronian alt-mode figure released in 2019, followed by the inevitable Earth Mode retool in 2021 as part of the Transformers Kingdom line. Both versions come with the unusual ability to combine his light bar and rifle into a sort of battle axe, which I find odd, but hey, if swinging a glowing axe around helps Red Alert work through his paranoia, then I'm all for it. And speaking of glowing axes, you do know who else had one of those, right? A rather optimistic dude that you just might know. If you want to know how I came upon my prime choice for my masterpiece collection, you can check it out here. Or if you want to watch my latest story, you can find it here. Either way, thanks for watching, and I hope to hear from you in the comments below. Do you think somebody's watching you? Go ahead and tell me your story.